The Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is set to present the budget at 11 a.m. today. The focus will be on the expected further acceleration of India's economic recovery from the shock of the pandemic. Now, in its economic survey, the government has projected the next fiscal year's GDP growth at 8 to 8.5%. Experts want the budget to address unemployment issue and also to create more jobs. The middle class, meanwhile, will be looking forward to tax relief so that they can have more disposable income in their hands. Now, it will also be important to see if the government will increase the fund allocation for India's healthcare sector to bolster it against any future outbreaks.
देखिए, देश के यशस्वी प्रधानमंत्री जी के नेतृत्व में दुनिया के सर्वश्रेष्ठ ताकतवर महिलाओं में से एक आदरणीय श्रीमती निर्मला सीतारमण जी के नेतृत्व में देश के सभी सेक्टर के लोगों को भावनाओं को ध्यान में रखते हुए एक सर्वसमावेशी बजट आने वाला है, जिससे निश्चित तौर से देश के लोगों का कल्याण होगा और देश भी आगे बढ़ेगा.
And also joining me on the broadcast are my colleagues who are joining from all across the country. Ayushman joins me from New Delhi. Meanwhile, Neha is standing by from Bengaluru. Ayushman, I'll come to you first. Talking about the healthcare sector, which you have been extensively covering for us on Mirror Now. Now, that sector has been massively hit, especially during the pandemic. Budget after budget, we haven't really seen anything to bolster really this particular sector is concerned. However, do you think that this budget will have a sum ensured for the healthcare sector so that we can see that boost that we have been talking about?
Well, Gaya, right now I am standing outside the Finance Ministry. It's the most important place, at least today in the country. The Union budget is going to be presented. In a few moments from now, we are expecting the Union Finance Minister, Nirmala Sitharaman, to come over here. Like you pointed out, the fact remains that India should spend at about more than 2.5% on of the GDP on the health budget. But what has happened is if you look at the past history, India has remained way below than 1.8% in the expenditure on the health sector. Of course, the COVID pandemic has really exposed our fiscal deficit, and we have seen the extreme amount of pressure being there. You can see the amount of expenditure that the government has spent on the vaccination and also the health infrastructure augmentation. What here, when we spoke to the health experts and the doctors and hospitals, what they want is somewhere the Pradhan Mantri Ayushman Bharat Yojana should, the extra money should be pumped in there so that the poor and the marginalized section of the society which comes to the private hospitals and bears out more amount of money, that can be covered. At the same time, insurance and the GDP cost, the tax rebate on medical devices and also other issues such as the GST cut in some of these sectors is something that the health infrastructure sector is expecting. How much of that will become a possibility, that remains to be seen. The economic survey projects that India would be seeing a growth of about 8 to 8.5%. That is still to be seen as to how that budget envisages that entire idea. But in a short moment from now, in fact, we are currently seeing that Union Finance Minister is about to come here. But for now, it would be extremely important budget considering the health infrastructure role here in this year.
Absolutely. Ayushman, in fact, I'll stay with you because the action is where you are at North Block currently. And we are actually bringing to our viewers live visuals from the North Block where Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is all set to arrive to present. I think, all right, she is there. Nirmala Sitharaman has arrived and all set to present the union budget. We'd have to wait and watch whether there's going to be the customary photo opportunity that we see every year. Remember, this is another budget in the pandemic year that we are looking at. All right, she's gone inside. Ayushman continues to be with me. Ayushman, you are where the action is. The finance minister has just arrived. What more can you tell us from on ground?
Well, right now you saw the Union Finance Minister going inside the Finance Ministry. We are expecting her arrival in a short while from now, where she would be coming out of the ministry with the Bahi Khata, the new concept which has come post 2017. From here, she would be heading towards the Rashtrapati Bhavan, which is just meters away from here. And then she would be heading to the parliament. And currently, the finance minister has gone inside. And in a short while from now, we will see she would be taking the budget and going to the Rashtrapati Bhavan.
Right, Ayushman, in fact, we've also been told that the halwa ceremony that used to happen, which was a customary ceremony as far as the budget is concerned, that's not going to happen this time because obviously due to the Omicron concerns. But right now she's entered the finance ministry. We expect her any moment from now with that Bahi Khata that you've been mentioning for the photo opportunity, which is a regular affair every year as far as the budget is concerned. Yes, Ayushman.
Well, here we are expecting the finance minister to come out. In fact, if you see, we have seen two of the Minister of State and for Finance. They have come here. The Secretary has arrived. The Finance Minister has also come here. So it's all set. The stage is set, and in about half an hour, we are being told at about 9 o'clock, the Finance Minister will come out with that iconic red bag, which is also referred as the Bahi Khata, in which the projections for the year, the expenditure projections for the year, the union budget will be there. From here, she would be going to the Rashtrapati Bhavan to meet the president, and then she would be heading to the parliament and present the union budget for this year.
Right, Ayushman, let's also take our viewers on what exactly are we looking at as far as this union budget is concerned. We have to also take into account the rising inflation and also the job loss that the country has seen all through this pandemic. Is that going to be the top focus other than the healthcare sector that we just discussed as far as this budget?
Yes, it is definitely going to be one of the key prospects that needs to be looked upon, because if you see, one of the key areas to focus upon is the rising unemployment in India. We have seen the record-breaking numbers from CMIE and also other institutes which conduct the surveys. There is also an important point which has been highlighted throughout the year, the economic dividend that we are seeing, the gap of income between the poorest and the richest. It is by far growing, and the COVID pandemic had only increased it. The onus is on government as to how the situation will improve in the coming year, how much of the gap, that fiscal deficit that India's budget is currently facing is bridged. That remains to be seen. But yes, the unemployment is going to be a key sector. How much of the capabilities are provided, the loan facilities are provided, that remains to be seen, because the government's focus overall has been to generate employment that has not taken pace as yet. So it would be important to see how crucially the path is carved so that the rising unemployment which India is facing right now can be catered, the youth can be catered something. The employment numbers are very, very important, and it would be important to see how the budget addresses that issue.
Absolutely, Ayushman. In fact, let me also take it across to Neha, who is standing by from Bengaluru. Neha, as Ayushman was mentioning, unemployment remains a major concern as far as the entire country, especially after the pandemic. A lot of people really lost their jobs during the pandemic. So as far as this particular budget is concerned, we've also brought to our viewers that the initiative really is to actually promote startups in tier 2 and tier 3 towns as well. So that is also a focus area as far as the budget is concerned. But what is the sense that you're getting from the common people on the expectations of this particular budget?
Well, absolutely, Griha. In fact, the common man in Bengaluru, much like in other parts of the country, is definitely hoping that there would be a reduction of tax slabs, one. And secondly, the fact that, the uncontrolled inflation that we're actually seeing, that something is done to sort of curb that. I'm going to take it straight to the people that we have with us right now. So I'd like to start by asking you, you were telling us a little while earlier your expectations from the budget.
my expectation from the budget is the government should try to reduce the tax rate for corporate and for individual, because even individuals are paying huge taxes by way of GST plus income tax and other taxes. So even in the corporate structure, as the government has reduced to 25%, they should further reduce so that new industries can come, new people can produce, set up the industries in India. And second thing is to curtail the government wants to increase the revenue. They should, in over a period of time, in phased manner, they should abolish income tax and introduce transaction tax and expenditure tax. And second thing is about the wealth tax. The person who are earning more than 10 crore a year, and they should be brought under the wealth tax net, since it was abolished about 10 years ago. So this is all my expectation from the budget.
All right. Sir, you mentioned, over time abolishing the income tax. That's something that you had also mentioned, the income tax, transaction tax. It has been a big debate.
Yes, madam, because they need to, because we are being taxed at every stage. We are paying GST at every stage of our transactions. So we don't want, again, to be taxed at the last slab also. Right. That is the reason. I expect at least income tax to be abolished for certain range. Okay. That is the reason. Right.
Now, coming to you, sir, you are in the tech industry. So I'd like to start by asking you, Bengaluru being the tech capital itself, are you expecting something in particular? We're seeing that, also, of course, being the startup hub, startups have contributed a huge amount to the national economy. Being in the tech industry, anything you're expecting?
Yeah, no, actually, I think we are very lucky that in Bangalore, we have a lot of infrastructure, a lot of talent. I think one thing that I'm really looking forward to is, how can the government help companies that want to set up infrastructure for electric vehicle charging. So we've seen in the news recently that Elon Musk is facing a lot of trouble to come to India because of high import duties. And that's fine. Like, we have a lot of local auto manufacturers who are willing to get into the EV space. But I don't think we are doing enough to encourage the companies that will build the infrastructure, the charging stations, because that is really what will drive the adoption of EV. And that can also help then offset the rise in fuel costs. We're seeing that the fuel cost is what is driving a big part of the inflation. So I think the government really has to think about how it wants to curb inflation, curb the rise of fuel costs, encourage the adoption of EV. And I think no better place to do it than in Bangalore. So looking forward to that.
All right, thank you. So a very interesting point raised there, Griha, about the EV space that we've been seeing for long now. Even the civic body, as well as the Karnataka government, who have been mentioning it. But on ground, concrete, we'll really have to see if there are more funds allocated, possibly, hopefully, to, of course, the IT-BT sector in Bengaluru.
Absolutely. Neha, since you are with people, I'd like you to take this to the people, because we are talking about the middle class. The emphasis of the budget should be the middle class. Let's talk about the pandemic specifically and also the service sector. Now, a lot of people have been working from home. They have a lot of expectation from this particular budget. They want a tax break when it comes to working from home, because they have incurred an extra expenditure on, let's say, internet or the Wi-Fi system that has been put in place as far as the common man is concerned. So what are their concerns and their expectations really in this regard?
All right. So one thing I'd like to ask you that, we've been asking people across the country today is that over the period of the pandemic, there have been a lot of people that have been working from home. So all the more reason they've been asking for a tax break, owing to, of course, the additional expenditure that you're possibly incurring, or be it on maybe the internet or on the other. So what do you have to say about this?
Yeah, I think they'll be good to have subsidies for folks who incur additional expenses. For example, like, is there a way to write off cost of your loan that you have towards your house, like part of it, right? Like, how can you give subsidies so that folks can then afford to buy bigger homes, take some tax breaks there, takes tax breaks for any home improvements they've done to build their home office or any other setup that they've done. So it'll be good to see if government can provide more incentives on that front.
All right, okay. Well, Griha, you have your question answered. Of course, we'll really have to wait and see what the finance minister has in store,
yes,
for, of course, her home state.
Absolutely. Neha, thank you so much for joining me. I will again take one more question to Ayushman, who's standing by from the North Block, where exactly the action is going to happen. Now, Ayushman, like we've been mentioning, the focus is the middle class, and there are a lot of exemptions and expectations that they would have from the budget. One major thing is the hike in ATC limit, because for the last 7 years, that's not happened. What is happening on that account? Any word that you're getting from the finance ministry?
Well, if you see the one of the highest aspirations that people have from this budget is from the class of middle class. The tax rebate is something that they always look to. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened the way it should have been. As per the expectations, definitely those expectations are definitely there. A lot has been talked about over the past few years about the MSMEs. This is something which caters to that class. The MSMEs are somewhere the backbone of Indian industries is what the industry claims, but the kind of rebate, the kind of taxation benefits which they want hasn't been there. So the middle layer of the society is somewhere anticipating that there would be something for them in the budget. Unfortunately, because of the COVID pandemic, the scale of pandemic. In fact, yesterday, if you remember the economic survey, it clearly showed, the graph clearly showed that there was prominent dips were because of the COVID lockdown. So COVID is something which has impacted the economy in certain way, which has seen its worst impact on the middle class. How much of that would get healed with the union budget, that remains to be seen. But for now, the government seems to be hopeful because the economy, as they say, is recovering. Today we are seeing the less number of cases also coming. So somewhere the third wave is ebbing, and that is something which is giving a positive prospects to government in order to see the future in terms of growth projections.
Absolutely. Ayushman and Neha, thank you so much for joining me. Ayushman is right there at North Block. We'll continue to cut across to him because the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is expected to come out for that customary photo opportunity any moment from now. Remember, we told you she's just entered the Finance Ministry and we are expecting her to come out for that photo opportunity with that Bahikata that we've seen every year since 2017. Meanwhile, this is the top focus that we have on Mirror now. The expectation from the budget as far as the middle class is concerned, we are looking at a hike in ATC limit. That is what the major expectation is. Remember, this hike has not really happened for the last 7 years. So that's something that we have to look at. Also, more exemption for the healthcare sector. That is also a major expectation as far as the budget 2022-23 is concerned. We're also looking at tax breaks for work from home, because higher expenses are being incurred by people due to work from home, due to the internet facilities that they need to be putting in place, also mobile phones, and they are expecting new allowances for the work from home. In fact, talking about the healthcare sector, they are looking at a major exemption as that is concerned, and also the expectation from this budget is to boost this sector which has been massively hit due to the pandemic. Let's